Hello all, and welcome to the second lecture for today, which focuses on two of the three main means of entertainment that Romans had, the theater and the circus. The third means was, of course, gladiatorial shows, which will be a lecture of their own. So first, let's talk about the theater experience. Public entertainment in Rome began as a component of religious holidays. The Latin word ludi not only indicated a religious festival, but also the entertainment associated with it. The earliest form of festival entertainment was the ludi circenses, chariot races. Later, when Rome began to interact with the Greek colonies in southern Italy, the Romans added theatrical performances, the ludi scianici. The Romans relied upon professional entertainers, usually of servile or freed status. Because the games required professional entertainers, putting on games was expensive. In the Roman Empire, the duty of paying for the games fell to the aristocracy. Although a financial burden, putting on games was also politically advantageous, as it allowed an ambitious aristocrat to develop popularity among the lower classes and hopefully win votes for election to higher office. After the creation of the empire, the emperor assumed much of the financial burden for holding games within the city. Outside of Rome, wealthy aristocratic sponsors paid for these public entertainments. The ludi scianici in Rome were modeled on the Greek tradition, and they continued to reflect their Greek origin during the imperial period. The earliest plays were Greek tragedies and comedies that had been translated into Latin. Later, plays with more Roman themes and settings began to be written, some by Greek-born authors and other by native Romans. The first permanent theater building in Rome was constructed by Pompey in the 1st century BCE. Our evidence indicates that the Romans preferred comedic productions in their theaters to tragic drama. The earliest comedies were primarily translated or adapted from Greek plays. Shorter and more coarse in language and content were the Italian Atellani, developed in the Campanian town of Atella around the 2nd century BC. The actors in these performances were called histriones and were generally freed or servile professionals who worked in troops. The head histrio acted as their manager and arranged performances, with wealthy benefactors paying for the performances. At the end of the 1st century BCE, the pantomime became popular. Pantomime featured a male actor who performed completely on his own. He would not speak or sing, but would dance to the accompaniment of musical instruments and choral singing. This art form was considered to be one of the most technically demanding. Not only did the actor need to tell the story with gestures only, but he also played all of the parts himself. Mimes were also popular beginning in the 1st century BCE. Unlike pantomime actors, mimes worked together in troops of 7. Unlike other forms of theatrical performance, both men and women could be mimes. In traditional theater, men played all of the parts, including female characters. Despite their enormous popularity, mimes were rather notorious for their immoral performances and lewd behavior. By the end of the 1st century BCE, the professionalism of the performances and participants had increased, as did the cost of hiring actors and staging productions. Harvey number 314 tells us that the first performances were put on to appease the gods due to a plague. The performances started as just singing, but then grew into dancing and acting. This says, at that time, it seemed that their efforts should be put towards some new and unusual religious practice rather than any human endeavor. So the Romans began to listen to songs designed to please heavenly powers. Because it is normal human behavior to follow up such small beginnings with eager application, some of the young men watching began to add simple and unprofessional dances to the words addressed to the deities. Soon they hired a professional dancer from Etruria to perform a dance. The skillful agility of this dancer followed the practices of Crete and Lydia in the East. In the earliest days of Roman history, the ludi scianici were performed on temporary wooden stages, built out in the open. No seating was provided. In the passage quoted here, Valerius Maximus reports that in the 2nd century BCE, the Senate passed a law prohibiting the construction of seating at theatrical events. And it says, the Romans passed a senatorial decree that prohibited the construction of seating in Rome or within a mile of Rome, or for people to even sit at the games. This certainly comes from the belief that the relaxation of the mind goes together with the virility that comes from standing. This belief is characteristic of the Romans. This conservative law, however, quickly fell out of use. Due to intense political competition in Rome, itself, the Senate prohibited the construction of any permanent entertainment building within the city. The senators feared that the person who paid for such a building would gain an unfair advantage in popularity with the lower classes. In the mid-1st century BCE, the senatorial general and statesman Pompey built Rome's first permanent stone theater. It stood in the Campus Martius between the Capitoline Hill and the Tiber. Pompey circumvented the law against such structures by constructing a small temple dedicated to Venus above the upper tier of seats, then claiming that the building was a temple rather than a theater. This passage, written by a Christian author, has a negative slant because Christians look down on the luxury and excess of Rome as well as their uncouth paganness. And it states, when Pompey the Great, a person inferior only to the theater he built, finished construction of that theater dedicated to every wickedness, he was afraid that there would be public outrage of his memory, and so built a temple of Venus on top of his theater. When it came time for the dedication of the building, he announced by edict that he was summoning them to a temple of Venus and not a theater. He added that he had placed seats for watching the performances beneath the temple. So he dressed up a building that was illegal and deserved to be illegal to look like a temple, and overstepped the whole issue of legality with religious superstition. The architect Vitruvius also speaks about the best ways and places to build a theater. He says, after the forum has been situated, a location must be chosen for the theater that will be used during the holidays dedicated to the immortal gods. The location should be very healthy, preferably in the wholesome zone along the city walls. Provision must also be made that the theater does not face south. If the sun is allowed to shine directly into the theater, the air will get locked in by the curvature of the structure, and the building will get hot because the air is not able to circulate. The design of the foundation of the theater will be easier if it should be placed on a hill. The number of levels of passages beneath the seating should be determined by the height of the theater. The passages themselves should not be taller than they are wide. Taller passages block the sound of the human voice and keep it from reaching the seats located above the passages, and important elements of the words will be lost in the air. In short, the building must be designed so that a line drawn from the lowest to the highest tier should touch the tip of every seat on the angle of the interior of the theater. We can see some of these architectural features in action in two of the theaters still standing today. Unfortunately, no theaters in Rome are preserved, but the ones in Pompeii, bottom, and Ostia, top, seem to follow Vitruvius pretty closely. In fact, Vitruvius was especially helpful in reconstructing the theater of Ostia because it was found in pieces. Regardless, you can see that as Vitruvius suggests, a line drawn from the floor to the top tier of the seats would touch the tip of every seat. Despite their low status, actors often gained much popularity and acclaim, which was usually commemorated in their epitaphs. There are two examples of this on your screen now. The first is an inscription that honors a pantomime actor named Lucius Aurelius Aplaustus Memphius, a freedman of the Emperor Lucius Verus. Aplaustus is described as a superior actor and was even granted honorary membership amongst the decurions, the town councilors. As a freedman, he could be admitted to the town council itself, but it was common to bestow honorary membership upon freedmen benefactors. And this reads, to Lucius Aurelius Aplaustus Memphius, freedman of the emperor's pantomime, winner of the sacred games 3 times, and most important actor of his time. He was nominated to the College of the Augustales of Hercules. The Senate and the people of Tivoli also honored him with honorary membership to their town council. The second one is an inscription in Greek honoring the female mime named Basilla. In earlier days, she won glory among many peoples and many cities as she performed on the stage every type of theatrical show in mime, choruses, and also frequently in dance. She may only be a corpse now, but she has won the same glory as she did in life when she would cause her body to fall to the ground as a part of a performance. Basilla was a member of a troupe of mimes, a performance type that often had a bad reputation that was passed on to the people who performed it, as we can see in Harvey number 321. Yet this epitaph to Basilla suggests that elite perspectives on mime, as Pliny writes in Harvey 321, may not have been shared with the lower classes. This scene from HBO's Rome depicts their interpretation of what a mime show might look like. They definitely play up the lewdness as well as the popular aspects of it.
They're far more handsome in real life.
Now let's move on to the second form of entertainment, which was the circus and chariot racing. The Ludicreucenses, or chariot races, were one of the most popular components of the spectacle entertainments associated with religious holidays. The chariot races originated in the early Republic and lasted long into the era of the Christian Empire. They were held within an open structure called the circus, meaning round or track. The circus building itself was a racetrack with two long parallel legs with an ornamental barrier, spina, down the middle. At either end of the spina, at the point where the chariots would make the turn to go down the other side of the track, were the turning posts, or metai. The metai were 3 cones tall enough for the charioteers to see from a distance down the track. Tiered seating rose from all sides of the track. The starting gate stood at one end of the structure. The first and most famous circus was the Circus Maximus in Rome. Chariot racing began as early as the regal period, but the first permanent seating was only added in the late Republic. By the time of the renovations and seating enlargements of Trajan and later Caracalla, the Circus Maximus could have held as many as 250,000 spectators. Other circuses were constructed in major cities, but their enormous size and expense precluded their construction in smaller towns like Ostia and Pompeii. Unfortunately, not much of the structure of the Circus Maximus remains today. The land is still flat, but the track is gone, and so is the majority of the seating structure. On your screen now is what is left of what stands. Like theatrical performers, charioteers were trained professionals of low, often slave status. Individual charioteers belonged to an organization known as a faction. The factions would compete against one another. Rome and towns following the Roman model had only 4 factions, each designated by a color: red, green, blue, and white. The evidence indicates that people tended to favor a particular team rather than individual charioteers. The races themselves featured 12 teams, 4 from each faction. Chariot racing was wildly popular. Whether out of genuine affinity for the races or a desire to appeal to the circus's multitude of fans, emperors often publicized their preferred chariot faction. In the passage quoted here, the biographer Suetonius reports the Emperor Caligula's incredible passion for the circus. He says, Caligula was such a fan of the green faction that he would frequently dine in their faction stable and would even spend the night. At one drinking party with the faction, among his other handouts, he gave the charioteer Eutychus 2 million sestercii. On the day before a race, he would compel silence in the neighborhood of the stables by posting soldiers there so that his favorite horse, Incitatus, would not be disturbed. In addition, he gave Incitatus a marble stable box, an ivory manger, purple blankets, and a collar made out of jewels. He even gave the horse a house complete with household staff and furniture. In the horse's name, guests would be invited to dine with considerable elegance. It is even stated that Caligula had reserved a consulship for Incitatus. While, as we saw previously, the horse was the favorite, sometimes charioteers became incredibly famous and popular as well, despite their low or enslaved status. An inscription in the Capitoline Museum in Rome, dedicated to the leader of the Red faction, includes the pictures of 2 horses, Aquilo and Hirponus. The inscription gives their pedigree and even lists the number of victories. It says, Aquilo, black in color, full of Aquilo, won 130 races, came in second 88 times, came in third 37 times. Hirponus, black in color, full of Aquilo, won 114 times, came in second 66 times, came in third 56 times. To the spirits of the dead, Claudia Helice made this for Lucius Avilis Dionysius, manager of the Red faction and her most worthy husband. Because it was so popular with the common people, chariot racing often drew criticism from the upper classes. Here, Pliny expresses his upper-class bias. For him, chariot racing is repetitive and pointless. He seems disdainful that fans favored a faction rather than appreciating the skill of individual charioteers. He says, I am not captivated by chariot racing in the least. In it, there is nothing new, nothing various, nothing that would not suffice to see just once. How amazed am I that so many thousands of people wish childishly again and again to watch horses running and men standing in their chariots. They are fans of their team color. They love their team color. Indeed, if on the track itself, in the middle of the race, charioteers should exchange their jersey, the crowd's zeal and favor will change with it. What I do find surprising is how many aristocrats are fascinated with the races. When I think of those people, I take a certain amount of pleasure in the fact that I am not distracted by that spectacle. Each chariot race had 12 teams, 3 from each of the 4 factions, as I previously mentioned. The most common chariot team was the quadriga, a 4-horse chariot. Novices might use teams of only 2 horses, biga, while very advanced charioteers might compete in novelty events with as many as 6 or even 8 horses. The gates of the track were spring-loaded like mini catapults and were all connected to a single lever so as to assure a fair start. The person paying for the games, the editor or munerius, would signal the start by dropping a white cloth, known as the mappa. When the cloth hit the ground, a person would pull the lever and the gates would spring open. There were 7 laps in a race. The turns were always the most dangerous and the best opportunity for a good charioteer to take or extend the lead. The spina was only about 5 meters wide, so turns could be very tight. If the charioteer decided to take a wide turn in the interest of safety, he lost valuable time. The race ended at the finish line in front of the box of the presiding magistrate. The winner received a victory palm frond to carry around the track and some prize money. There were typically 24 races in a day. While some of the tactics in this scene are not recorded anywhere, like spikes on wheels, the scene from the 1959 movie Ben-Hur shows the excitement these races offer to audiences. The funerary inscription of one of the most successful charioteers in Roman history, Diocles, has been preserved. On his tombstone, Diocles records his complete career statistics. I've excerpted some of these here. His racing career lasted 24 years. During that time, he started in 4,257 races and won 1,462 times. In total, he came in first or placed 2,900 times, second 861 times, third 576 times, fourth 1 time. He made 9 of his horses winners of 100 races and 1 horse he used in 200 of his wins. His accomplishments include 2 wins in the first year he began to race with 4-horse chariots. Both of those wins he took the lead late in the race. Diocles, most famous of all charioteers, won 1,462 races and 50,000 sestercii 29 times. Diocles' career stands out above all of them. Diocles also stands out among all recorded charioteer careers with his novel prizes. To add to this feat, he raced in a specialty contest with 7 horses yoked to the same chariot, a spectacle never seen before. He won this race and took away the prize money of 50,000 sestercii. In all, he raced 4,257 times and won 1,462 times, collecting a tremendous amount of prize money. It is especially interesting to note how he compares his own career with that of other prominent charioteers from Roman history. It is clear that detailed records and statistics were kept of charioteer careers. Judging by the statistics that were kept about Diocles, many people took chariot racing very seriously. Like modern horse racing, betting was extremely common. Factions competed for fans as well as victories. This enthusiasm led to drastic measures in some cases. Many curse tablets have been found invoking the death and destruction of charioteers. The following is an example from the later empire. It shows the kinds of texts that were written for someone to gain what they thought was an edge in an upcoming race. And it reads, I urge you by oath, demon, whoever you may be, and I demand from this hour, from this day, from this moment, even that you shatter and kill the horses of the green and white factions, and that you kill and crash the charioteers Clarus, Felix, Primulus, and Romanus. Steal the breath from their bodies. I ask this from you by him who has released you at this time, the god of the sea and air. Ovid in Harvey number 330 uses the enthusiasm of his girlfriend for the chariot race and a certain charioteer to try and win her graces.